introduction, but we're going to do it anyway. David Teachout is a mental health therapist and photographer focused on and teaching how creativity intersects with mental flexibility. David grew up as a Christian fundamentalist, attending a Bible college, and received a bachelor's in theology and psychology. During his studies there, David deconverted and has been on a journey of appreciating humanity and all the stories we create to build meaning and purpose. He has a master's in both forensic psychology and counseling psychology and is currently focused on studying philosophy and ethics. David has been actively working within the field of psychology as a therapist, social worker, consultant, and subject matter expert for over 15 years. In his spare time, which I'm not sure how there is any, David enjoys reading a lot. Feel free to look him up on Goodreads. I follow him and then feel bad about not having met my goal yet. But he also has good recommendations. Participating in fitness events and getting out into nature as much as possible. David's business can be found at lifeweavings.com, and his writings can be followed and subscribed to at humanitiesvalues.com. So welcome back, David. How are you doing?
Thank you, Cara. I'm good. It's a beautiful day.
Excellent.
South Dakota
Oh,
is amazing
nice.
right now. Yep,
Yes.
yep.
I love that for you.
Yeah, I have so many clients. I mean, most of my clients are in Washington, so I get it's raining all day today, and I'm like, I mean, it's 80 and sunny, so I'm good. Yeah,
How nice. Ah,
yeah. We
yes.
do not have any haboobs in South Dakota. Yeah, yeah.
We learned a new word in the
We did learn.
pre-show.
Yep.
It is a weather event, it turns
It is a
out.
weather event. Yes, we don't have to worry about it. We don't have any desert here. Well, we do, but it's yeah, out a bit. So yeah.
So watch out. If you're in a
Yes.
desert area, watch out for the impending haboobs that may or may not be hurtling towards you.
Yes. Yes. Not ones that you're really happy about.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
No.
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 Okay, so on that,
And that
light note,
yeah, on that
David,
light note, let's go to life and death. So
yes,
yes.
tell us about our topic here this evening. What is going on with this topic of decisions of life and death, and why are we talking about it?
So why are we talking about it? Well, because all of us are ostensibly alive currently. If any of you are not, welcome anyway. The internet must be amazing wherever you are. And eventually we're all going to, slough off this little meat suit we've got. Um, and yeah, that's it. So, um, it's one of those where, uh, you know, we can think about life and death philosophically. We can think about it in so many different ways, and in the intersection of life and death, in through the mechanism of ritual, through how and why we create meanings. In many ways, some theories concerning the development of religious ideologies and institutions have very much to do with what the hell is this thing, death? Why did this happen? Um, what's going on afterwards? Why, for that matter, why do I sometimes hear the voice of my ancestors? And prior to advancements in neurology and psychology and certain things, it's understandable that we would think that these people were still talking to us. So and so we have to come up with reasons for this. That's a whole other presentation. But for this, I'm going to go into a little bit of, kind of touching on that a bit, like what is the nature of religion, hence some of the poll questions. And then eventually we're going to end on very practical matters of what the hell do we do as we approach, end of life concerns. I am not an expert on the legal matters concerning end of life care and so on. So hence, I didn't feel comfortable getting into all of the nitty gritty. We've got resources for everybody for that. Have a great resource in particular, our own. I'm not sure if I can say her name, so I will abstain until I get permission. But has created a workbook called Identity Affirming Death Care Directives, of which the latest and newest version will be coming out soon, and will become a resource for everybody. But I'll be ending on kind of going through a lot of things that the author of that workbook created. It is amazing, and very much looking forward to everybody having access to that. So yes, we will
David,
be
would you
ending on
like
that.
to share the poll results first, or you want to do that later?
Yes, I was about to turn to the poll results
All right, here we go.
because that'll get us right into the first point.
Okay, it should be
Yeah.
showing on your screen. Can you see them?
Yep. Oh, yeah. So let's see here. Yeah, religion is a singular force or entity that has the power of agency. I mean, at this point, I literally have people on Facebook when I get a post on like David's presenting next. There's somebody offhand who always goes, "Oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to the poll questions." I'm like, yes, there is one person that appreciates my humor. So the the answers are interesting here. We had out of 19 people filling it out, six people said, "Damn straight, religion has hurt me." 11 of the 19 said it's a multifaceted thing and there's no single form it takes. I always love throwing in a multiple choice answer into a multiple choice set of answers. Um, and people use the social power of religious ideas and institutions to control, 12 out of 19. You're going to get all nuanced again, aren't you? Yes. Yes, I am. I will also be slightly not even slightly, it will be very self-referential in referring back to a different presentation I gave a few months ago. And so then we got, death and dying is related to religious faith practices in what way? Nothing. It's just a way to make sense of the unknown. 4 out of 19. They sometimes provide structure for people creating meaning and purpose. 9 of you said that. There's a way to distance ourselves from the inevitability of our demise. 11 out of 19. That was definitely the winner. And of course, this got dark real quick because it did too. Who's your favorite death mythological deity? We had a couple of people showing up for Thanatos. Thank you. Anubis. Kara would like a word. Why more of you did not pick Anubis?
What, did
Nobody
nobody
picked
pick
Osiris.
Anubis?
No, 2 people picked Anubis.
Oh,
Nobody
okay.
picked Osiris.
Only one person picked the Morgan, so I'm just
I
gonna judge them.
know.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I would
unite with that
serious
person.
judgment about the lack of Morgan representation here.
Wow.
Yeah, only one Hades because predominantly the answer was none of the above. So I can only assume that everybody has a far more esoteric death deity that they're interested in. We did post the Wikipedia link for the list of lists there. So by all means, yeah, have fun with your death deities.
Yeah.
And because if you can't have fun with a deity, then you can't have fun with a death deity. I mean, really, this is
Yeah. And then what's the
fun.
point?
What's the point? Really? Yeah, if death's not funny, come on. So how excited are you for Deadpool 3? Really, this is the most important question. I mean, let's face it. Ridiculous excited. Thank you, too. LFG, one person caught the reference there. I love the fact that is everywhere for the marketing. So that the acronym everywhere is slipping in an F-bomb. It's fantastic. Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are delicious. Seriously, why was there not more than 5 who answered yes to this? Both are yes. And of course,
Yes.
rated R movie for Marvel for the win. I'm still coming back to what was it? Reynolds in a recent interview noted that he was actually shocked by how much Marvel / Disney allowed. He was like, they let us go. He's like, it's a new dawn for Disney movies. I'm like, only
Ooh, I'm
Reynolds
excited.
would open up that floodgate. That's absolutely amazing. So
True. True. Well, I'm looking forward to it. So
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. So did people not answer that one? What was the most popular answer? I'm sorry, I can't see it
Oh,
because
the most
Zoom has
popular
decided
was
I can't see
Rated
it.
R Marvel for the win, followed closely by Reynolds and Jackman Are Delicious.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right. That is an acceptable answer then.
it works. Yeah. So the majority, definitely good answers. So
Good.
awesome.
Good.
So
Now,
speaking of then that first question, what is the nature of religion? It's this is a little bit of what sparked it this last couple of weeks, because a lot of the clients I work with working through religious trauma, working through identity struggles that come out of ideological structures that are more fundamentalist. Um, I lift you. You know what? Looking for group? No, I never would. I wouldn't go there. Yeah, I think BFG, Big Friendly Giant, Roald Dahl, but clearly that is not the same acronym. So anyway. So what often comes up is, of course, this notion of religion being this entity. We often will even say it in our, in various social media posts, like religion did this, religion is about this, and we just fill in the blank. And the difficulty, of course, with this is that um, religion isn't a thing. It's a label. It's a um, it's not a force. It doesn't have any agency. Just because we think about it doesn't make it real. So the it's a way of kind of shorthanding a collection of various practices, of which, I mean, that's why we have so many different religious groups, is because religion itself doesn't really point to anything necessarily. Um, and so, and so part of why I'm making a big deal is this is not just about semantics. I mean, part of it. I do love philosophy and linguistics, but the the reason for this is that what we think, how we frame things, which is we're going to go into quite a bit more here shortly, helps us determine how we're going to function in the world, within it, for ourselves, because how we frame things, how we construct things, is a means of control, of prediction, so that we know, hey, wait a minute, I know what I need to do. I know what I need. This is what I think the world, in the next 5 minutes, 5 weeks, 5 years from now is likely going to be, and therefore I get to determine through, the selection of various limited resources that I have, what I'm going to do next. And so what we think does matter. And so what I'm going to encourage is that we actually look at, every time that we hear the term religion, we immediately followed up with, well, what part of it exactly? It's kind of like whenever I get asked, like, do you believe in God? I always ask, well, which one? Hence the death deity question. It's like, I'm not going to assume, nor I'm also not going to do the work for you, of assuming, that your God, whatever that may be, he, she, it, they, whatever, may be, is, accurate, nor even am I going to assume that we're using the exact same word. I mean, shoot, I can use the term God all day long. And does it matter? Like, does it intrinsically matter at all? It's like, I don't know if anybody watches Kunk on Everything. She's a British
yes.
comedian.
I
Delightful.
was given
I
such a
love
good
her.
compliment a couple of weeks ago as I ran excitedly across a field to go look at the Liberty Bell. I was told, you know who you remind me of is that person from Kunk on Earth. And that was the best compliment I've gotten in weeks.
That is pretty awesome and true. Yes. But she had a skit around the historical person of Jesus Christ, and she's like, what's amazing is that this person was named and he was a carpenter. And it's amazing that he was named after the two words that you often say after you hit yourself with a hammer,
When you hit your
as a
thumb,
carpenter.
yeah. I saw that.
Oh, you went mute. Oh, Rob muted.
I'm sorry.
Oops.
I'm
There we
always
I
go.
wonder
muted both of us
about
somehow by accident.
the experts that she is interviewing. Are they in on this? Do they know the questions are going to be so ridiculous?
I don't know. I think they're in on it. I think it's a little bit of a between two ferns idea there, where like everybody knows, but they're not fully apprised of just what questions are going to come up. And
Yeah,
so,
sometimes I think that, and
yeah,
then other times the faces on the whoever it is, scientist, professor, seems like they can't be this good of an actor. They're like,
I think some of
They're
them
like,
just have a phenomenal sense of humor and they can run
yeah.
with it.
I mean, some of them seem like genuinely taken aback. I don't
yes,
know.
yes.
Yeah. It's so yes. So the first recommendation of the evening, go out and watch Kunk on Everything. She is
But
absolutely
yeah, she
delightful.
actually has Kunk on
Yes.
Shakespeare, Kunk on
Yeah,
philosophy is like, oh yeah.
it's just, oh my gosh, yeah. So, but regardless, coming back, you know uh, the reason why, so like, okay, fine, what God do you believe in? All right, well, let me know first. Same thing with religion, like, oh, religion did X. Okay, what exactly was it? The people? Was it an ideology? Was it a particular dogma? What are we even referring to? And the purpose for this is not just to whinge philosophically. It very much is about depowering religion's influence, as it's no longer kind of snuck in there as if it's some kind of force upon our lives. You know, religion didn't do anything to us. The people involved utilize certain aspects of this social creation in order to engage with us in certain ways that, upon reflection, in various ways, we recognize, wait a minute, this is bullshit. So I want to move on. This is not helping me, be, the best human being, that I can be. And so because of that depowering, because of that limiting of the power of this force that we call religion, we then learn to accept our own power, that we're the ones who get to, form this creation that of these ideas and these institutions for the direction of our meaning and purpose. I mean, it's one of the things I've mentioned, several times before in other presentations, is one of the most insidious lies that we are told by various religions and cults, on the spectrum of, of those idea creations, is that it of its own nature is a repository meaning in purpose, and therefore when we leave it, somehow we've lost meaning and purpose, that we've lost even the capacity to create it. And so now I have to jettison everything before that came before and create whole cloth what it is that is important to me. And the reality is that is a bold-faced 100% lie. You were in charge the whole time. You were the one that determined what and whether anything that you believed and anything that you engaged in was accurate and important and meaningful and providing of purpose. You were it. Now, you may not have, fully recognized that, but that's the insidiousness of it. It's like they don't want you to. I mean, that's the nature of, the manipulative, in the nature of these kinds of thinking, of which occurs also in, politics as well. But is this notion that, wait a minute, you aren't the beginning and end here of meaning creation, and you freaking damn right you are. You're it. You're the one making this stuff up. That's why it's both, largely absurd, and two, also incredibly powerful, because we're the ones doing it. And so as we, enter into these questions around like, okay, so what is and how do we then conduct ourselves in relating to questions of end of life care and the questions of how we are going to show up, what rituals mean, why rituals are actually okay. They really are. They're just habits that we've done. We don't have to give them any more power than we desire to give them. And so and this is where part of this goes into this is a whole other thing, but personal construct psychology. And this is an excerpt from the Wiley handbook on this. But there's not always implicit notion that things really are different and that a concept is a property of things as they really are. In contrast, a construct is something that is created by an individual personally. Its reality exists not in the things themselves, but in the interpretive act of the individual person. It's kind of an academic way of saying everything that I said. It's like we have these concepts that we give these various labels, like religious ideologies in general, dogmas, worldviews, various ideas that are part of various worldviews, whatever. They're just concepts, but they're not things out there. We're not finding truth out in the world. We're like searching like a blind man going, oh my gosh, I've, felt the leg of an elephant. And, this is like, no, the whole thing is our experience. And we are trying to figure this out because, frankly, we don't know what is going to happen next. We create these things, including religious ideologies and structures, in order to help organize our experiences to make them predictive. So that when I walk into, say, a church building, for instance, I'm going to assume from my own experience, assume a, Protestant, say Baptist, what I grew up with, then I'm going to experience certain things. Like if I walk into a Baptist church, I'm likely not going to see people falling over themselves speaking in tongues. Like it's likely not going to happen. Why is that? Is it because they haven't figured out the truth of speaking in tongues? No, it's that the reality that they have determined is accurate and not doesn't include that activity. If I walk into a hospital, if all of a sudden I enter a hospital and I start seeing an elephant walk by and a clown car and 12 clowns pop out of it, I'm likely going to start asking myself, one, what shrooms did I just ingest before I walked in here? But two, maybe I entered into the wrong building. So how we think about the world helps us determine what is likely going to happen next. And when things go wonky, all the anxiety and the uncertainty that we were keeping under a tight lid rises up. This is incidentally why it's so important on how we talk about our relationships, how we talk about our organizations. Every time that we create rules and labels and we dialogue through what is and isn't appropriate within however you and I or you and somebody else interacts with one another, we're effectively saying thank you for organizing my experience with me. Thank you for showing up and joining with me in our attempt at limiting the cacophony that is the world. I mean, the power and health of relationship is in many ways just how much you both acquiesce to one another's attempt at making sense of the future you create together. And that is no different than when we do it in, broader issues like religions.
So I love the way you put that, David, because I feel like that just all by itself really does a great job of explaining how uncomfortable the other people that we are in relationships with in our lives can get if we find ourselves exiting what used to be a shared belief system or a shared structure. It's not just that I'm not
Hands down.
convinced of this deity anymore. It's tearing down this whole structure for understanding the world and how we act and what's going to happen in the future. That really kind of, I think that's a really good way to think about that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why we go through deconstruction and in some ways reconstruction. Like we are figuring out, wait a minute. I mean, that's why it can be emotionally distressing. It certainly was for me. I mean, being embedded in a Bible college and going, well, shit, like none of this works anymore. What the hell am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to interact with people?
What am I
Why?
going to
Because
do with
religion
all
isn't
my
one
time
thing.
on Sunday?
Right. Well, probably masturbate. But
Yeah,
I mean, it's just like,
absolutely.
I mean, absolutely, yeah. To Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. So,
I mean,
bring this full circle.
obviously.
Obviously, yes. So it's like when we when we consider like these things aren't things out here. We haven't stumbled upon free floating ideas. Instead, we have figured out ways of going, how am I stepping into this thing that allows me, this construct, whatever it may be, that helps me make sense of what I'm going to do next. And further, helps me make sense of what I'm going to do next with other people around me. And so with that mentality, we can take a look at the various pieces. We aren't going to go into all of these because I already did this before. But is to in fact, there we go. Just put the YouTube link to a presentation I made a few months ago on being a Buddhist atheist. And so I'm referencing Ninian Smart's 7 Dimensions of Religion. And so when we consider religion and ideologies in general as constructions to help provide and give meaning and purpose and direction and structure to the behaviors that otherwise are just going to look really weird to those around us. We can look at and why we should break this down again, because for Smart, amongst others, religions have various pieces or components, including the practical and the ritual, the experiential and the emotional, the idea of the numinous that was, discussed through Rudolf Otto, the conversion of Apostle Paul, sort of experiential, emotional thing. Whether or not it actually ever happened, is beside the point, or is a separate question, perhaps, to ask. Because people are using it as a means of helping flesh out, oh, if I have something similar, then I'm on the right path. The visions of Muhammad. So then we have mythic or narrative, and the doctrinal and philosophical, the ethical and legal, which is getting a whole lot of heyday these days, as it tends to encroach on, policies. Social and institutional. It's the people themselves, including their own history. And then, of course, the material, works of art, figurines, geographical locations, without getting into all that can of worms. It's just, it's one of those things that, my wife and I have been together now for just shy of 11 years. And it's one of those things that still pops up on occasion where she grew up in not at all religious, just didn't come up on our family. And particularly at the beginning of a relationship, I would reference things and be like, the history on this is, Protestant Christianity and this kind of thing. And she's like, what? Are you kidding? Like, why would that, what does that have anything to do with this? And well, I mean, here we are. We have the material stuff. Like it's the art, the stuff that we're doing. And that's actually a really good, I'll mention that here in the comment, is, taking a look at what do some of these things mean, and they mean different things to different people. Hence why, thank you for the lovely comment, People believe in the supernatural are often underestimating how awesome the natural can be. Now, and I love that. And I would add that in some ways they're not underestimating so much as seeking to parse out part of the natural and make it and own it for their own experiences. Because as soon as you don't, assume the reality of the supernatural, so clearly because we don't need to assume that reality. So as soon as you don't, then really at the end of the day, we're still talking about the natural world. So all the stuff that people are talking about, it's all part of the same reality that we're all dealing with. So it's one of the things I love mentioning is something like mirages. Mirages are real in the sense that they are part of reality and experienced in a way that we can define them. They're not real in the sense of you go up and experience them in the same way as an actual physical instantiation or a differently physical instantiation, since it's all happening in the brain. But so all of this stuff is still natural and real and so on. It's that what the supernatural does, this construct of the supernatural does, is it takes certain elements and says, and now this is mine. This is how this must be seen. There is no other way of doing it. How many people here, as we move into notions of rituals, but how many people here, had some form of vague or numinous experience, like say even, nature. You go out and you go, wow, this is just incredible. Rob's picture in his background of, the rainbow. People see that and go, that's absolutely amazing. Now, what the supernatural is.
There's actually a book by Dawkins. I'm going to put the link in the chat, the Wikipedia, Unweaving the Rainbow, where Dawkins basically talks about, understanding how the universe really works. It doesn't make it seem less important or wonderful. It makes it seem more.
Right. Spot on. Yeah, I'm undoubtedly pulling from Dawkins and I didn't even know it. So it's one of the things about reading so much. But it's one of those things where, it's like, but for others who are seeking, again, we come back to what are these constructs for? They're helping make sense of the next thing. A rainbow isn't just a rainbow for the Protestant Christian. A rainbow is a reference point for ritual. It's a reference point for history. It's a reference point for their mythology. It's a reference point for their institutions and how they use it. Hence why they've had such an uproar over the last couple of decades as Pride takes it and says, hey, by the way, this is still a human thing, by the way, and we are all and should be included. Like, why are they all upset? It's just a symbol, right? Ooh, no. No, it's like the old Freud thing is like a cigar is never just a cigar. A rainbow is never just a rainbow. People. It's like I remember years ago I was working at a call center, and somebody showed me a printed photograph of their car window, and they're like, "Do you see it?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, yeah, do you see it? It's in the window. It's there. I'm like, I see a reflection, wavy lines, probably of a tree that you were around. Oh no, this was a creature and went under this huge long thing. And I'm like, sure. Can we get back to making phone calls? It's just like we we have these experiences and we want to make sense. And how are we going to make sense of them? Within the spaces, within all of those dimensions of for religious people, within those dimensions of meaning making, how do we fit all of this into? And the naturalist doesn't do anything different. We just clearly have, different structures, for understanding these things, for predicting what is going to happen next. And so what we're then doing here, and so part of this is like why in discussing life and death, like, oh my gosh, where's practicality? Well, the practicality is in how we are constructing our worlds. This isn't just, philosophical whinging, like I mentioned earlier. It's not my new favorite phrase. It is, it's how we construct things, what we're doing, pausing enough to be able to reflect on how it is that we are looking at the world and therefore stepping into, in some ways, not necessarily what we created, but what we allowed to happen. Because when we put a label on something, we have effectively said, this is what is proper within this container that we have done. Now, it's important to do, like we can't not do it, it's how our brains work. But it is one of those things around going, yeah, but there's so much more going on, hence religion, and looking at it as from a component perspective, so that we don't get overwhelmed by one version. We can break it apart and go, you know what, it's not really as mysterious. It's not as powerful as you want it to make, whoever you are, it doesn't as powerful as you want it to make it. It just isn't. It's just how we're, trying to figure out meaning. That's it. It's okay. We're stuck here trying to, figure out the existential angst that drives all of us. That says, hey, death is inevitable. What the hell are you going to do about it? Well, okay. What are we going to do about it? And so this is, some people refer to like religion as a form of control, sort of, but no different than all the rest of us are trying to do, because the more we can predict things, the more control we have over it. I mean, this is fundamentally, just as a small tangent here, around abusive relationships. Why is the abuser so narrowly focused on doing specific things against this other person? Because they know that if I do A or B, I'm going to get this thing that I know ahead of time. I know you're going to react in this way. It's a controlling mechanism. So the person engages in this, an action, a way of thinking about the world, so that they can control the outcomes to some degree. And if they can predict it, well then, I mean, that's the power of prediction, is not in the prediction itself. It's in the acknowledgement of, when I do A that allows for this prediction to be true and B follows, well, now I know every time, hopefully, whenever I do A, B is going to follow. Shoot, talk about powerful. So what we're trying to do then is that through, as religion is this interpretive construction. It's a means by which we're trying to limit the world and say, okay, here's all the things we're going to allow in our view of it, and everything else can, go away. Cognitive bias for the win, and of which we all have, is doing it differently. And so, yes, good question. We'll come to that in the end. And so all too often, we then, consider religion, the ideas we associate with it, as these things then that exist as part of reality itself. And so we have to wrestle with it. Well, we don't. It's just an attempt at figuring things out. And we can jettison it just like we do any number of other things. It's not any more powerful than what we're going to give it credit for. And so instead, we're interpreting things. Our brains take in data all the time. It's constant interactive force trying to figure out like what's going on. We clearly do not have conscious access to all of that. If we did, I don't even know what that experience would be like. It would certainly be numbing. We'd just sit there and drool because you just wouldn't know what to do next. So we're parsing things out and then giving, and then it creates this conscious experience that says, okay, here's this controlled little way of moving forward in world. In many ways, consciousness or experience is a lie. It's the primary. Well, that's why some people refer to it as a sorry hallucination. that we're basically, hallucinating our experiences. Arnold Seth refers to it at this, amongst others. It's one of the books recommended at the end, called Being You. And, because it's hallucination, because it limits the information that we have available in order to create something that otherwise doesn't quite exist. And so, anytime that we encounter, whether it's religious ideas, whether or not it's practices, whether or not it's other rituals that aren't necessarily religious, the important question to ask is, what future must exist for this idea or action to be useful? Let me say that again. Like, anytime that we come across something, an action, a behavior, a desire, a policy is probably one of the easiest ways of looking at this. A, a law, when we are putting things on the books, when we're saying, I want this as a policy, a social policy enforceable by any number of, institutions, what are we saying? We're effectively going, I want the future to look like this if this follows. If people, put up, follow this and agree to it, then the future is going to look in this particular way. And it's no different than the rest of our behaviors and the rest of the things that we do. And that's going to have even more weight when we talk about end-of-life care. And so when we are looking at then, like, okay, I'm trying to figure out what the future holds. And there comes a point, of course, when that future encounters nothing. The end, death itself. What exists after? And much of what these rituals and attempts at meaning creation are doing are in many ways a kind of denial of the end. They're a way of projecting us into a future that says, I know something about what's going to happen next. And so the uncertainty of it diminishes. Hence one of the answers in the poll questions. So what are all these things for? It's not the whole answer, I think, but it's partly. Because it's not fundamentally any different than the rest of the things we do. Why do we leave notes for those who are, close to us? Why do we, wear certain outfits? Why are so many, backgrounds right now on here, some form of rainbow, which is awesome, by the way. But why is
It's
that?
Pride
Because,
Month.
right, it is Pride Month. And what is Pride Month but a projection forward of, this is what we would like the future to be like? It's part of like that old, like, I don't know if anybody's seen those silly memes, like, this is what liberals want the future to be like. And it's just like absurd, whatever. I mean, it's a caricature of everything that is ridiculous. And, and yet it's funny because there's a kernel of truth to it, just like our own backgrounds here, albeit far more limited way. We're effectively declaring to everybody else who's visiting here and who's seeing this, is going, hey, one, we belong. One, we belong together. So it's a signal to others that, hey, we are trying to create this reality together. Let's join and figure this shit out. But it is then a projection forward of, like, wouldn't it be great for the world to look in this kind of way, in all of the meaning that is wrapped up in, that rainbow and what we mean by it? That's effectively what we're telling everybody with this. And so the it's always fun having the chat up in the background because he's chuckle on occasion. But from The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, who, if you're really looking to get psychologically philosophical, highly recommend. Not light reading, but great for if you want to have a book club or partner reading, like a lot of fun. That's going to generate quite a lot of discussion. Um, so, but one of the things that he referenced was on, how in many ways the denial of death is bound up in, self-esteem and this notion of being able to affect things in the world, because death is basically a denial of that effect. It's a denial of our ability to change the present as it collapses into the future. And so so in some ways, any of this denial, any of the stuff that we create is in many ways a little narcissistic. There's a certain level of it that says, I want to still exist. I want to still be me. I still want to be around. I want to know that what I did mattered. And in that way, all right, fair. So how are we going to go about doing that? Well, there's a lot of different ways. Family, what we do with not only from the biological perspective, but also in our chosen family, that the people we have in our lives, that we have varying levels of intimate connection with, that what we do has affected and therefore gone beyond our limited space. And as they move on from us and continue to live and go forward after us, we have effectively denied death to a degree. Acts of service as well. The things that we have done to shape the world, even if only in a tiny way, in a way that we would like, is going to last longer than we are around. Why are movements, political, religious, and otherwise, so important? Why do we belong to RfR? Because we want our lives to be, there's a moment of denial of saying, no, death is not the end. What I have done is going to live on after me. And we are, in fact, also 20% cooler. Absolutely. So, it's like we want what we do to last beyond us. Because, and again, this is just a continuation of what we're doing the rest of our lives. Is what we do helps us shape what's coming up next. All this is just a continuation of, well, after we're no longer even potentially conscious. So the way to do that, and to hence is why we come back down into rituals. Rituals really is just another word for habits, institutions. They're behavioral ways of structuring structuring our ideas in a way that then connects us with other people. It grounds our senses in a structure to share meaning together. Why, why before every single RfRx at the very beginning do we go through, this is what we're doing, and this is the hope and healing, and this is what our organization about, and so on.
Because we like to hear ourselves talk.
Well, I mean, there's part of that. But we're building this thing together. We're saying, hey, this is what we're doing. Thank you for joining us. Let's expand on this. And in a way then that helps reduce the state of overwhelm. I mean, part of what's really nice about events like this is that we get to come from the insanity of our lives at times and come into a place where we know more of what is likely to happen. Even people who don't like my poll questions, at least, they're going to be ridiculous. So at least in some way, there's a predictive element to it. So we come here because we know what we're likely going to get. And lastly, then it provides a means of projecting then into that imagined future. We've said, oh, what I did was bigger and therefore will last beyond me, even if it is only for a few moments, or, in the case of teaching or writing or, artistic expression and creation. It's things that are going to keep on going. And so when we think about all these things, that's really what comes down then to our considerations concerning end of life care. Is these questions, what we're going to do with our funerals, what we're going to do with the legal documents that last will and testament and so on. They're a physical instantiation of saying, this is what I would like the future to look like. This is what I would like things to be. Here's a projection of what is important to me beyond when I am no longer capable of influencing it in the way that it would like. So I think earlier, Dan, I think, may have put down the list for at least the current iteration of the identity affirming death care directives. But there is going to be a new version coming out hopefully soon. But considerations of, say, again, legal documents, will and testament, advanced directives, in the sense of what's going to happen if you're incapacitated for your own care. Designation of guardianship, especially if you have kids or even pets for that matter. Shoot. List of bank accounts and vital records. Some of these things that are important to us that sometimes we gloss over, and yet why are they important? Because they are part of this long line of rituals and events and activities that we get to use in order to at least influence the future to some degree in the way we would like. That's why I love the title of this workbook that's been created. It's the identity affirming. It's basically a declaration of, this is me, world. Here's how I would like me to keep being me. And the last thing that I'm going to have any influence on is how I'm going to be remembered.
Do you happen to have a link to a version of that people could see?
I think so. 1 second.
Okay.
So I have a link to the most recent. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to share. I sent out messages to the creator and I'm like, can I share this? And I haven't heard back yet.
Okay.
So I want to be
Is
careful
it
about that. I don't want to step on
okay?
anybody's toes. Yeah.
Is it okay if we share an older version?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I
like
think
the
that one's still
identity,
that's out there.
yeah, the iaddresource.org. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to drop that so people can check it out.
Awesome
All right.
sauce.
Okay, there it is. Carry on. So we can look forward to a new and updated version coming out soon, it sounds like.
It's fabulous. It really it's wonderful. Wish want to spread this out far and wide. Well, and even it's a forum for those of us who can't go necessarily through an entire college course on death and dying. This helps reduce some of the concerns. And again, come back to why would it reduce it? Because by organizing some of these things, we have said to the future of which we are not a part, wait a minute, I still have one more thing. I'm not dead yet. It's like a Monty Python skit. Like, I'm not quite dead yet. Like, I still got some choices to make. I still got some things to say about how I want to be taken care of. So we have, the final arrangement checklist, funeral home, final resting place. Is it, permits for that matter? Shoot. It's not like you can legally cremate yourself and have somebody just throw your ashes anywhere. I mean, not unless you're willing to deal with some consequences. So, I mean, this is not an advocacy for.
You wouldn't be dealing with the consequences.
Yeah, that's true. I wouldn't have to deal with anything. Yeah, I no longer any me that is possible is no longer existing. But legal name and gender for legal documents. How are you going to be instantiated in this permanent record? Declaration of religious preference. There is so much here about how you want to be treated. Hospice care, whether or not you want to be visited by a clergy if you're in the hospital. There's a whole lot of issues there around rights, and as everybody is quite aware, just how many hospitals out there are run by Catholic or Catholic churches, and assume that you're going to want to listen, talk to somebody of their own faith, and often will then disregard even if you say otherwise. So there's a whole other legal fight here that is brewing up. And so obituary and eulogy. Do you have a say in what that's going to look like? This is literally partly how people are going to be able to look you up later. What do you want it to say? The remembrance services. How's a visitation going to go? Funeral, cremation, going to be planted as a tree, which is actually really cool, by the way. I just came across that. Like, heck yeah,
Yes, this
very
is
cool.
what I want to do. I am so on board with the tree option.
Yeah, it
Yes.
is just very, 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 very cool.
Yeah.
Not cheap,
Yeah,
because
that's the downside.
yeah, yeah, the whole process and making it uh workable in soil is quite the thing. So, but hey, if more people get involved in it, we'll see.
Yeah.
What happens to the gravesite? And we put so much time and effort into, say, weddings, and yet often, my father actually is financial planner for decades, and he often worked with people on, figuring out what they're going to do with just even their finances, and the number of people that have no thought to it. And I get it can be, scary. Who wants to actively engage in that? And yet we should, because well, it's a continuation of what we've been doing our entire lives, figuring out how we want the next little iteration of our little corner of the world to look like. How are we going to have that see? What influence can I make on that? And so when we come to a lot of these questions and how, these rituals and what we do with them, it's like we're essentially seeing with our mind's eye just that little piece again of that future that we want to create. They're a means of continuing to influence even when we're gone. How cool is that, actually? That what we do will echo even for a little bit after us. Because in the end, we'll figure out, like, we're never like, yes, we are all individuals trying to figure this shit out, but we're also individuals embedded in the rest of the social relationships that we have and the influences then that we individually have on all of those things. And this is how we continue to make our voice heard. This is how we take that power that was never the religious institutions in the first place. It's always been ours. This is how we take that and own it for ourselves again and step up and go, no, you don't get that. This is mine still. I took my life back. Let me take my death back, because it's still part of my own process and journey. And there are decisions that I want to make known. So how can we do that?
Ooh, I love that. I never really thought about that before in terms of you're not just taking your life back, but also you can take steps to take your death back and how people remember you after the fact. Because how many times have we had somebody come on the program and talk about, well, there I was at a funeral and they started preaching and it was my grandpa and he was not even religious, but somebody hijacked it. And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, I love that. So does this workbook, is it kind of like a way of writing out your wishes to sort of make them
Hmm.
known?
Yep.
Ah, that's
There's
such a
there's
great idea.
entire Like for the eulogy and so on, there's an entire sheet. Like you can write it all out.
Yeah.
So it can be almost its own document to, put in a safe and pass along. Not a lawyer, so obviously would highly recommend consulting with in order to make sure just how legally binding some of these things can be. There's a whole host of other documents that one must get in order to have some of these decisions that you want to make be allowable,
And I
not
see
least of which permits and so on.
Gail, the attorney, is holding up
Mm,
her version of the workbook.
yes, there we are.
Yes.
Yep.
This is great. Well, and this is probably a lot more accessible. I mean, like you said, I know there are a lot of legal processes that go into these kinds of things, but not everybody has an attorney on retainer to do all of these documents for them. So this
Yeah.
seems like a great way to start for free, because I understand the workbook is just publicly available, or
Hmm.
is about to be when the new edition comes out. So, wow.
Yep.
That's super helpful. I can't wait to get my hands on that.
Well, and like, Glenda was noting in the comments around, having been to one death ritual that wasn't, religious, I would assume in a so-called traditional way. I don't even
Mhm.
like using that word tradition. Like I don't know, it gives it more power than it really does. It's traditional only in the sense of happenstance. I mean, really, whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's
Oh,
like, but it was actually focused on the individual. And how
yeah.
sad is that? That here's this
Yeah.
life and what? It's no longer matters because they're gone. If anything, they matter even more. I want to know that what I did is going to, and the choices I make still have some kind of influence. Even if obviously I won't know. It's still there is a peace to be found. Some form of it.
Yeah. And also, I think I just accidentally deleted someone's question. I was trying to copy it
Oop.
so we could ask it, and I am told by the chat that I have deleted it, which I didn't realize was possible. So I apologize if somebody was just asking a question. It was not deleted on purpose. Please share it with us again so we can ask David. Sorry about that.
That was me.
Ah, so
Oh,
yes,
sorry,
questions.
It
Helen.
was my own question, so you're fine.
It's around, yeah.
Oh, okay. Did I delete it or did you delete it?
I deleted it, but you thought that you deleted it.
Yeah, because it says you just deleted a message, and I was like, I did not.
It's the collective you.
It's
Yeah,
selective
it's the
you. It's
plural
you
you.
being Rob's brain. That's what's
it just
happening.
means it just means you human beings. That's all the X
Right,
is about.
right.
We're all the
Yeah,
same.
fair enough. Well, it probably is getting close to time for Q&A. While we gather some more of those rather than delete them, David, do you have any kind of points to leave us with?
Just that last. This is, the reduction of our, or rather removing our ideas from some kind of force, some kind of agency. That we are at the end the ones that are making all this shit up. And that's pretty freaking cool. Our
Love it.
ideas don't have to run our lives. So we can question these things. I mean, it's literally what we're all here for. It's part of the journey we're on, is the deconstruction. That doesn't stop. If anything, it's just simply a continuation of, going, oh, right. It's like, oh, I'm about to reference, the Agatha. It was Agatha all along. Guess what? It was you all along. You were the one at the center of this. You were the one deciding.
And
Just for a
now you're
moment
giving
there.
spoilers for Marvel stuff. I don't know if you should be doing it.
Right.
Fair enough. Well, I am going to drop the resources that you shared with us into the chat in case anybody missed any of them. There's also some books. I don't know if we've gone over all of them yet, but that is actually one of our questions. So we'll just go straight to that. But first, where can people find you if they want to learn more, David?
So I have a lot of resources, and also can contact me through my website at lifeweavings.com. But then also, do a lot of writing. Also posting more, podcasts, but mostly writing at this point. At my Substack at humanitiesvalues.com. So you can, follow. You can subscribe. It's totally free. It's basically a service that, hey, support.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely check those out. And let's move into some questions because someone got inside of my brain and asked a very good question, better than the one I would have even come up with, which says, do you have a book recommendation for taking back control of my worldview as purely a natural phenomenon instead of something more than natural? Please give us your book recommendations.
Other than the ones that already put in for the list, I would, given that, let's see here, it's one on ethics that I would do. So Morality for Humans, by
Ooh.
Mark Johnson is, it's just, it's absolutely incredible. And it's fun because, he explicitly goes against the religious notions here of how morality is determined, and is avidly an advocate for a naturalistic ethic. And so it is, I mean, one of many that I would recommend around ethics. And the reason why I go to ethics is because ethics is how we construct our life. It's the means by which we interact with our own futures and the people that we are with. So a more fully realized ethical system is exactly how you take control of a kind of your own life.
Excellent. All right. And do you want to take a second to tell us about any more of the books that you didn't get a chance to talk about yet? I know we've gone over a few of them, but are there any others that you want to plug?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so Morality by Jonathan Sachs is one that I've just recently started picking up. Um, it's for some, it probably is going to smack a little bit on the side of conservative in a way that it might rub people a little off. Um, Good. It's like so many of these things are not necessarily about agreeing with every last piece. It's about the struggle of figuring out, okay, wait a minute, how do I think about these things? Yeah, it's fundamentally how, it basically left Christianity, by the way, is actually started reading so many of these other perspectives and even reading the stuff that I was told were the other, what other people said, and then I came across them and went, wait a minute, this isn't what they think. Like you can, it's like, it's Norman Geisler for those who are, remember,
Oh,
that guy,
yep.
crackpot. But it's just like, some of the things that how he described other ethical systems and philosophies were just flat out wrong. And it wasn't until I actually started reading some of the materials and going, wait, no, how can you be that blatantly wrong about these things? Wait, oh, okay, like that's a problem. And the same thing with well articulated alternative viewpoints on things is that it's not necessarily about agreeing with all of it, it's about wrestling with them in such a manner as going, okay, I hadn't thought about it that way, or oh, this is how other people are constructing things.
Fair enough. All right. Well, let's see. I think we've got a few more questions. Rob, do you want to share another question with us?
This one's kind of a softball. I think I can guess the answer, but I will read it anyway. Uh, David, do you think religion wants to have power over a person's ability to control their own death and end of life wishes?
Should they have power over it?
No, do you think they want to have power? It's a very general question.
Oh, people in general, or
It's asking about religion.
oh,
Now, I know you
well,
told
see,
us
now
earlier
we're going to
that,
come back to
yeah.
religion itself doesn't exist.
Right.
So it's
I would presume they mean
Those,
the people who are in control of religions.
Yeah.
well, I mean, absolutely. And I mean, there's one thing around if, it's interesting around when you start looking at, say, medieval Europe and just how much of a person's life was run by religious rituals. It's incredible, from depending on the community, from morning to dusk, from life to death, all of these things, the number of holy days and so on, and all the stuff that has to be associated with them and what was expected of you. I mean, this was a structure. This was a militant, way of saying, we are now going to tell you what your life means from the moment you enter it screaming to the moment you leave it possibly screaming. So, it of course, it's the old wisdom of, I think, I forget it was which, it's a Benedictine monk or somebody, I forget who. Um, but it's variations on this. It's like, give me the child, and until the age of 10, and I'll give you the man. There is something to be said around when a institution or group of people can determine for us how we are going to express who we are. You're damn right that's powerful, and people are going to want it. I mean, that's why we come back to social policies. That's why these things are such a big freaking deal. They're not just, well, I kind of want to have this. No, it's a declaration of how we want the future to look. And to some, it is going to be vehemently against it because that is not the future that they want. So of course, anybody who is, going to want, I remember was a show years ago called Dharma and Greg, and there was it's delightful. But it was this, very, suit wearing, lawyer guy, and who ended up marrying a child of hippies. And it's just like her father was still very anti-establishment, and he was like, nobody's gonna assign a number to me. I'm like, well, Social Security kind of already got you there. But it's just this whole thing around, like, he recognized in a silly way, but still recognition of, if you get to determine how I enter into this world, then you've had some kind of influence then of how I'm going to live it and leave it. Of course, then these decisions are going to be important. And of course, they're going to be at the forefront of, cultural change and policy making, and, cultural wars and so on. Absolutely.
There was a
And so,
Next Generation episode which touched on this, and I still remember it. There was some Klingon who was aboard the Enterprise D, and I think was seeking asylum vaguely, and like there was almost going to be a war about it because the Klingons came and they wanted him back, and Picard would not give
Mhm.
him back, and he was ill, and then he died. And Picard, oh, I'm so sorry, he died. Okay, how shall we return the body? He said, keep the body. What's the body to us?
Yep. Yep. Well, in fact, the Orville had. Oh my gosh! I hope that show gets renewed. I don't think it's going to, but
I don't think so either.
every last episode is gold
Yeah.
for the exploration of various social ideas, and there's one that's frankly about sex change and this entire
Yes,
culture that got
yes,
rid of all their women
right.
and or all their females, to use the word that they're actually using, and um, and
of
just how
course,
much
that's the
control
word
that
they're
gave.
actually using.
Well, they wanted to be, I think the writings wanted to be very, very specific about what was going on. And so, it was like, no, you literally are physiologically going to be changed. And in the way that they reproduced it, made it possible. And so it was this whole like question of like, well, per person, if the government can determine how you're going to come of age and have your, I forget, it was age of a majority. It was, the point at which you can then give back to the community and society at large. They get to determine how you're going to do that. Well, now they get to curb a lot of the behaviors that they don't want. Just absolutely phenomenal. There's several episodes that went through this, and the interactions, the dialogue that occurred between the two fathers was incredible. Just absolutely really well done.
And it was
Yeah.
one of the main. It was the main characters as opposed to some like just a guest for an episode. And it was a recurring theme.
Yeah, it was a recurring theme. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. I love it. This is where you go to get your book recommendations and your sci-fi recommendations. Just anybody wasn't
Well,
aware.
shoot, for that matter, sci-fi Star Trek Discovery just ended, and
No
it's like,
spoilers. No spoilers.
yeah, no spoilers.
I
but,
haven't seen
one of the
the end
characters.
yet.
Yeah. One of the characters, which is not a spoiler, like it's from the very beginning, it has to do with, obviously, there's some fantastical elements to this, but it's, for narrative purposes. But it's just, a hell of a conversation, piece to contemplate. And you just kind of go, okay, how does this work? Even to the point of later on the doctor having having another person's consciousness, again, fantastical element to it, put into his own body and knowing it would happen and be like, okay, wait, how does this work? It's just, there are some elements of it that was like, really?
They
But
tackled
even then,
transgender way back in Next Generation, and
Yep.
I think they would do it differently now. The Trill species, which is basically the parasite in the human body, but the parasite is really the consciousness and the intelligence, and is passed on no matter what body it's in. Right?
Yep.
Riker comes
it's
across
a
somebody.
symbiotic relationship,
Yes.
not a parasitic one.
That's
Yeah.
correct. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for the clarification.
Actually, excuse me. Sorry.
So Riker had a relationship with a female and didn't see her for a long time. And then she comes on the ship and she's in a different body and the same consciousness. And it takes him a while to get used to that, but he rekindles the relationship. And then that person dies, and now they put the symbiote into a male body. And nope, that's it. Goodbye. So it's like,
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it was the same species for Discovery. Well, was that they expanded?
Not spoilers. That's spoilers.
Yeah. We know
it's
who
in
it
like
is.
the first season.
I'm sorry, but like Riker would have drilled that. I'm sorry. Knowing Riker.
Fair point. Fair point.
Yeah.
Okay, and on that note, let's bring it back to one final question before we go to our wrap up. But with all this in mind, David, as you were going over this identity affirming death care directive workbook, were there any things like that came up for you where you thought, oh wow, I had not considered this, or this is something I Oh, nice.
It was honestly, going through this and the group that, is kind of exploring, what RfR might be able to help out with some of these things. It was one of those, it's been a continual moment of going, oh, this is how much some influence still exists from the days of trying to deny. If I just don't think about it, then I don't have to worry about it, right? Yeah, no. And so, full honesty, like there's almost everything here that I'm like, okay, really need to get off my ass and take a look at this. Even in prep for this presentation, it really impressed upon me, like, wait a minute, do you actually believe the words that are coming out of your mouth, or you just kind of speaking here? Like, what how important truly is this? And it is. And so I've got a lot of decisions to make.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to drop the link again for the website for that. And I believe it's next week that version 2 is coming out, or it says on the website the date that I think they're dropping the new updated version. But there's a ton of resources and other links on the website still as well that you can use.
Fabulous.
So, all right. Well, thank you once again, David, for sharing with us with your vast knowledge of all things psychology and this time death and death care. So that was great. loved it. Added to my Goodreads list, so it continues to expand faster than I am able to read it, but you know, it is what it is.
Mhm.
Okay,
Was it?
well, yeah,
Yeah. You can never have too many books. That's the way it is.
that's true. You can't. That's not a thing. That no one has ever had that problem of having too many books. I mean,
Yeah.
other people might say that you have too many books, but you don't actually have too many books. That's
Right.
yeah.
In fact, I just came across one final place around the author Umberto Eco, um, and he had talked about personal libraries, and there was a quote from him around how it's like nobody ever questions having too much medication in your cabinet, and yet
Right.
books are the medication of life. So why like we want to be able to go to them and go, I need to read that now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my
Yes.
rationalization for having a library.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's, you know, the medicine cabinet of knowledge. I like
Uh,
it.
Yep.
I
Yep.
like it. I love it. Perfect. Well, I'm adding to mine. No prescription required. It's part of your prescription for coping. Hey. Okay, I'm gonna quit speaking now, and we'll wrap up and go to the hangout. So don't forget to join us next week, same time, same channel. We are gonna have another panel discussion next week. It's gonna be all about it's gonna be our Pride panel. This is Pride Month, and we are gonna be talking about LGBTQ plus and queer experiences, perspectives, sort of post-religion, coming out of religion, and it's also going to be an opportunity for Q&A. We've had a lot of people mentioning in the past few weeks, hey, can we have some more episodes about kind of talking about sexuality from a perspective that is not the one that I got growing up in my church where they didn't tell us anything. And we're going to do that next week. So bring your burning questions. You can put them in the chat anonymously, and we'll have different people with different experiences answering
Who's
them.
going to be on the
And
panel, Cara? Tell the people who's going to
oh,
be on the
well,
panel.
I'm glad you asked. Some of the people that are going to be on the panel are, of course, you and me, Helen, will be hosting, but we're also going to have the amazing Glinda Jordan, who you may all remember from another one of our very popular episodes about polyamory. We are going to have Dr. Ben back again, and maybe one or two other surprise guests. So be sure and join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, and it'll be a cool hangout as well. Okay, costumes are encouraged. I mean, you know, if you want to dress up for Pride, you know, you do you. Okay, anyway, after that, the following week, we have Richard Gilliver talking about the implausibility of the resurrection. And we're going to have several more episodes. Well, we're going to have an episode every week after that. But a little look ahead to August, we're going to have a talk by Rob about are humans actually special in the universe? He's trying to catch up with David's number of presentations. But, you know, bring your questions about I feel like we're going to talk about aliens in that episode, Rob. Am I right?
We are
Yes.
indeed.
I'm excited.
Are there? So I did this talk at the Skeptic Camp in Raleigh last week, and we know we talked about how I could slightly modify it and be appropriate for this crowd, and I think it's going to work.
I'm excited. I cannot wait. Okay, and tell us where people can find us on the social media, Rob.
Oh, all over the social medias, pretty much all over. So, of course,
Yeah.
Facebook, we're recovering from religion, all one word on Facebook. And there's also a Facebook support group, which is RfR Support Groups Project. We're on the former Twitter, the thing known as X now, where they don't do tweets, but they do excretions, I understand. It's RfR.org on
Ah,
X. I didn't make that up, but it's a good one. Yes. The posts on
I
X are
love it.
excretions. Instagram, we're RfR.org. On TikTok, we are recovering from religion. And let me remind you again, I mentioned it before, but for the people who missed it, we have 198, count them, almost 200 recordings on YouTube of these shows. So you can go there and go to our YouTube channel, Recovering from Religion. And as I said, the latest is Dr. Ben with Black and White Thinking in a Gray World.
Excellent. And we're looking forward to having Dr. Ben back again. And yeah, so last thing before we wrap up, don't forget that this is a volunteer-run organization, and we always need more volunteers. If you want to get more healing in your life through helping others, volunteering is a great way to do it. A lot of our volunteers find that they get a lot of meaning and purpose out of volunteering, and kind of goes to what David was mentioning earlier about having something that you can say, hey, I did this. This is a thing that I can feel good about leaving behind. Not that you have to think about it in such a morbid way, but it doesn't have to be morbid. We're doing nice things for people. And if you want to help people, you can. All of our services are staffed by volunteers, and that means we need people to help us with all of them, whether it's a outward facing thing like answering the helpline or helping us do the podcast. There's also other things that are behind the scenes, like running all of the technology, helping me use Zoom. That's a full-time job, it turns out. Helping us with IT support, editing videos, helping us find the resources for people to use, all that and more. We still need web developers. We need people to help us train volunteers. We need support group leaders, whatever it is. If you have a skill, I bet we can use it. So check us out on our webpage. Go to recoveringfromreligion.org and click the volunteer tab. And now, Gail, would you care to wrap us up with a few words? Not wrap, I feel like that's suggesting you're going to be entangling us with words. Would you care to deposit some wisdom upon us?
Thank you, Kara. Thank you, everyone, for coming. David, outstanding presentation. I don't know if you made this crystal clear. David has headed up a group of volunteers within RFR who are trying to address this very issue. There are extremely limited resources surrounding secular death, if you will. Sometimes that might be a secular person dying with a religious family, or a religious person dying with a secular family, or a secular person dying with a secular family. All the variations, there's so few resources. So many of them are wrapped around religion. You know, the death piece of religion that's a big thing for them. So it's very hard to find any kind of resources that don't capitalize on that. You all know in your own experience, when one of your believing friends has an issue and it's a death in the family, the believers come out of the woodwork to do the little praying symbol and amen, and over and over and over again. It's really, even the most progressive of religions have a hard time with this, because that is their big golden ticket, is that we all get to go to Disney after it's all over, and it's hard for them not to capitalize on that. And that's even with people with good intentions. Those with less than good intentions, the resources are for hospice chaplains, for funeral homes, you name it, for any across the spectrum, there's just not good resources. And so David and the team have been working on that, and that's where we found that the individual who crafted that resource book. Please take a look at that. It was very hard for my estate planning lawyer self to sit through this without unmuting myself and jumping in. And I can't say enough, the tagline for my law practice is love after death. I know that we as free thinkers know that when we die, our brains die with us. It's the end of it. We know that. That's our strength. It's not the end of it for the people that we leave behind, for our loved ones. So this is the reason we do these things. When I'm gone, I don't have to worry about where my house is going, where my cars are going. It's not going to trouble me. It's going to trouble my family. So think of it in terms of embracing those you love. My daughter's in the room here with me, and you might see her roll her eyes, because all I do when the family is together is ensure, does everybody know what's going down, so that they understand the legal piece of it, and how my trust is structured, and how that's going to be divided up, and what's going to happen, but also, what my healthcare directive is, what my end of life wishes are, all those kinds of things. So I sort of wear them out with it, because it's an important thing. Anyway, I could talk about that for days. Sounds like an RfRx presentation. No, I'm just kidding. But if something is better than nothing. If you'll write down on a piece of paper, do this exercise, do this workbook. If nothing else, do this workbook. Go through those questions and figure out those answers, and do that with your loved ones. Share that with your families. Anyway, enough said about that. So if you enjoyed David's presentation tonight, I have an opportunity for you. You hear us talking from time to time about the fall excursion. That's our weekend religion recovery retreat. It's in September. We have a new camp venue this year. It's in Charlottesville, West Virginia. It's going to be awesome. We come together. In the past, there have been 70 or 80 of us. We're hoping for, about that many this year. It's a weekend away from screens a little bit. It's a time to laugh and to cry and to carry on and to fellowship together and to eat massive volumes of delicious food together, to share your story, to hear other people share their stories. David's going to be presenting there, and he's going to have a talk that you're not going to want to miss. The website, of course, I know Kara's ahead of me. They have probably already dropped it in the chat. If you have any interest, you know that recently we had a fundraiser. We have we raised funds specifically to prepare ourselves for the fall excursion. Please don't let the price keep you away. If you need a little bit of a subsidy, you can ask for a little bit of a subsidy. We don't want that to be a barrier to anybody attending. The thing I can say the most about it is most of the people that have attended in the past are going again this year. That's the biggest thing I can say about it. It's my biggest endorsement. We keep going back year after year. We would love for you to join us this year. Thank you to all of our hosts, our behind the scenes people. David, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the streaming. Thank you for all the things. And then the people who do post-production, as usual. Thank you. Thank you. Everyone enjoy the hangout, and we'll see you next week.